Good morning, friends. This is Kiran Palakurti, Advocate, High Court of Telangana, and member, Legal Education Committee of Bar Council of Telangana. Friends, for those who are practicing on civil side, they should understand CPC, Code of Civil Procedure Code, in a systematic way. We all blame CPC, Code of Civil Procedure Code, is a reason for delay in dispensation of justice in this country. But it is not correct, friends, because many of the provisions in CPC aimed at speedy disposal, and if you thoroughly understand, if you follow the procedure scrupulously, it would be easier for a civil case to be adjudicated within a specified period, not more than 1 year. I'll tell you the reason why. How many of you, while drafting plaint, refer to Order 6, and while drafting pleadings, either in plaint or written statement, and also plaint Order 7 and written statement Order 8, the rules, if you can understand these provisions properly, you can avoid subsequent amendment of pleadings and you can do justice to your client. So friends, I intended to explain CPC in the form of several videos, several parts. I'll upload them regularly in my channel. So friends, Code of Civil Procedure Code, which we have been following, is 1908 Code of Civil Procedure Code. It underwent various amendments, 1951, 1956 and 1976, and a committee has been appointed under the chairmanship of Justice Malimat, and upon his recommendations, CPC has been amended in 1999. Thereafter, several bar associations in the country agitated, and one of the bar association in Tamil Nadu, Salem Bar Association, also challenged its provisions, and therefore the Supreme Court upheld the provisions of CPC 2002 amendments. In that judgment, 2005, it has been delivered, Salem Bar Advocates Bar Association versus Union of India. If you read that judgment, you can understand the purpose of the amendments which were brought to Code of Civil Procedure Code. So friends, I'll explain you the provisions in a systematic way. If you read from Order 1 to Order 20, they deal with various stages of suit, where place of suing, and who may be the parties to the suit, and till judgment and decree. Order 21 speaks about execution. Thereafter, there are certain supplementary provisions are there, and while trying civil suits, the courts have to follow some procedure with regard to interlocutory applications and several other provisions I will try to explain in these videos. Friends, what is CPC? Code of Civil Procedure Code 1908, consisting of 158 sections and 51 orders. And if you read section 122 and 125, they say the order in the first schedule is also deemed to be part of the code. So Order 1 to 51 also deemed to be Code of Civil Procedure, and we have to follow other rules framed by these certain high courts according to their local needs. 122 and section 122 and 125 and also Article 227 of Constitution of India empowers the high courts to make the rules according to their needs. They are also form part of Code of Civil Procedure, civil rules of practice, I can say. For example, if you want to draft an application for amendment of pleadings, Order 1 Rule 10 impleading the parties, and Order 22 impleading the legal representatives of deceased parties, your prayer shall consist of a prayer for consequential amendments. That's what Rule 28 of Civil Rules of Practice say. And if you want to file a suit on behalf of a minor acting as an ex-friend, you have to file an affidavit under Rule 172 of Civil Rules of Practice of a third party who is not having any interest in the minor. So these are all also form part of Code of Civil Procedure. So don't worry, friends. If you read them continuously, if you follow them regularly, you can easily understand. So friends, you should also know about the nature of the Code of Civil Procedure. What is the nature? And you should also know about the difference between substantive law and procedural law. Substantive laws, as you all know, they determine the rights of the parties. Substantive laws always gives rise to the parties, and procedural law is meant for the procedure how to enforce those rights. So what is important is substantive law, and procedural law is a servant of substantive law. And Justice Krishna here says a procedural law is always subservient to the substantive laws, and the provisions of CPC must be interpreted in a manner so as to subserve and advance the cause of justice rather than to defeat it. These are the findings of the Supreme Court in various pronouncements. And another 1976 one judgment of Supreme Court says we must always remember that procedural law is not to be tyrant but a servant, not an obstruction but an aid to justice. So friends, what I mean to say is, it is the procedural law is supreme, not the substantive law. It is the substantive law is supreme, not the procedural law. I'm sorry, because procedure should not come in the way of enforcing the rights of the parties. I will give you an example. After 2002 amendment, if you want to file an application for amendment of your pleadings, you have to establish before the court that you exercise due diligence, you have taken every caution. Despite that there occurred a mistake, now you want to correct it. And amendment application after commencement of trial is barred. And if you can establish these due diligence or your carefulness, despite your taking care, the mistake has been committed and you could not file the application before commencement of the trial, then only the courts have to allow the application. But some applications have to be filed even at the time of hearing of arguments, hearing of the case finally. At that time the mistake has been noticed. Now that amendment is required for the purpose of your case. If that is not done, there may be problems would arise at the time of execution, and no justice can be done though the judgment is pronounced to you in your favor. I'll give you an example. There is a mistake committed in the boundaries because of lack of proper interaction with your client, or some two error is human. Therefore, you committed a mistake while mentioning one of the boundaries of the suit scheduled property wrongly. Therefore, that has been realized at the time of hearing of the case. You are having a good case. You have established everything. You proved everything in your favor, and the court is about to pass judgment in your favor. But because of this mistake, even though the judgment is passed, you are unable to enjoy the fruits of the decree. Therefore, the amendment is necessary for your case. In such circumstances, friends, keep Order 6 Rule 17 proviso aside, and the Supreme Court says you allow that application because the amendment is necessary for the benefit of the plaintiff. This is what Supreme Court mentioned in Sajjan Kumar versus Ramkishan case. So, the Supreme Court says in various judgments, one judgment, Revajitu Builders Association versus M. Narayan, Measures Narayan Swamy case, 2009 judgment, Supreme Court says the purpose of the courts is to do justice. The duty of the courts is to do justice, not to observe discipline among the parties, whether he comes late or at a delayed point of time. So that is not the idea, friends. CPC has to be interpreted to advance the cause of justice, not to defeat it. and it is always the substantive law which would prevail over procedural law. So with that idea in mind, you have to read CPC, you have to practice before the civil court. You should keep in mind that you have to enlighten the judges that procedural law is meant for enforcing the rights of the parties. But friends, you should not be negligent also. Merely because I am saying that procedural law is a servant, sometimes some provisions, you say, some provisions mandates parties to do particular sort of time actions within particular time. Take the example of filing of written statement. It has to be filed within a period of 30 days. It can only be extended up to 90 days. Only 90 days. Beyond that, courts are not bound to take your written statement. They can forfeit the chance of your filing written statement. So friends, we must be careful in following the provisions of CPC. And take the example of Commercial Courts Act. It given time for filing written statement 120 days, and after 120 days there is no question of taking written statement. There are several judgments of the apex court which say once the period of 120 days has been elapsed, there is no question of taking written statement. So therefore some provisions are mandatorily to be followed by us. So friends, we'll go to the topic CPC from section 2 onwards. Section 2 definitions, several definitions have been given. After that, I also explain you some of the terms used by the lawyers who are practicing in civil court, so that you can understand my videos properly, because I refer those terms in my future videos like interlocutory application, plaint, written statement, issues, whatever it is. They are not defined in the code. So friends, section 2, there are important definitions from section 2. Code includes rules. So section 2(1) says code includes rules. CPC includes rules mentioned in first schedule order 51, and at the end you would find an appendix. Various forms are given. These forms also explain you how your plaint should be, how your written statement should be. If you follow these forms, it would be enough. If you can follow these forms as convenient as practicable to you. So section 2(1) code includes rules. Section 2(2) defines decree. Decree is a big definition. It says formal expression of an adjudication so far as the courts determining it, conclusively expressing it, conclusively determines the rights of the parties. It says every formal decision of a civil court, expression of a civil court regarding adjudication, conclusively determining the rights of the parties. For example, a person files a suit stating that defendant has to pay some amount to him based on a promissory note. The suit is decreed. The court directs the defendant to pay certain sum of money along with interest, pendentality, as whatever it is, and also cost of the suit to the plaintiff. This is a definitive judgment, definitive finding, expression given by the court, conclusively determining the rights and liabilities. So the liability of defendant has been decided in this, and also the right of the plaintiff to recover that money from the defendant. Now, conclusively determines the rights of the parties with regard to all or any of the matters in controversy. There may be certain matters in controversy. For example, there is suit for partition filed by sister in respect of 3 items of property. One is building, one is agricultural land, and other is cash and gold. 3 items of property she mentioned in the schedule. She wants the court to divide the properties among the legal aids, and she says those are the properties acquired by her father out of his own money, self-acquired properties, she says. Now the court determines conclusively that item number 1 and 2 are self-acquired properties of the deceased person, and regarding item number 3, the court may say that based on evidence, the court may say that it is ancestral property therefore daughter, she failed to fulfill certain conditions attached to section 6 of the Succession Act, therefore she is not entitled to the share in respect of item number 3. Or the defendant may come forward with a will deed executed by the deceased person in respect of item number 3 of the property. Item number 3. So the court believes the will deed, therefore excluded from the partition, and the court can deny the relief to the plaintiff and grant the relief only to the extent of item number 1 and 2. So in respect of all or any of the matters in controversy, either the suit may be either preliminary or final. The decree may be preliminary or final. There are 3 categories, I will explain later. So this is the definition of the decree, and there are 2 inclusions and 2 exclusions. One, it says it shall be deemed to include rejection of plaint and determination of any question within section 144 of CPC. Therefore, there are 2 inclusions. Apart from regular decrees, if a plaint has been rejected, the plaint can be rejected by invoking Order 7, Rule 11, rejection of plaint. There are conditions mentioned in Rule 11 of Order 7. It says if it doesn't disclose cause of action, if it is barred by any law, and there is no court fee paid properly, if the suit is undervalued and the time is given for the plaintiff to correct the evaluation and the pay the court fee properly, and the plaintiff fails to pay the court fee properly, and if it is not filed in duplicate, new provision has been added, and if process have not been paid properly within time ordered by the court, then the plaint can be rejected. These are the grounds mentioned in Order 7, Rule 11. We'll discuss later. So under that, if any one of these conditions are attracted up to the application filed by the defendant to reject the plaint can be rejected. If any order is passed rejecting the plaint, it also amounts to a decree. So rejection of plaint amounts to decree, therefore you need to file an appeal. And one more inclusion is determination of any question within section 144. Section 144. What is section 144? Section 144 speaks about restitution. For example, plaintiff filed a suit, Mr. A filed a suit against B for recovery of money of rupees 1 lakh. So the trial court granted him the decree. Decree passed in favor of A, and B preferred appeal. Appeal has been heard by the appellate court. Appellate court also held in favor of the plaintiff respondent, and therefore the appellate court dismisses the appeal. Again, the matter has been carried to second appeal. In the second appeal, the second appellate court found that the suit is hopelessly barred by limitation, therefore reversed the decree. Because it is a legal plea, it can be taken at any time. The suit has been barred by limitation. For various reasons, the plaintiff could not establish acknowledgement or part payment under section 18-19 of Limitation Act, and though he taken the plea of acknowledgement or part payment, the suit has not been filed within the period prescribed by the law of limitation. Therefore, friends, the suit is reversed, the decree has been reversed. But by that time there is no stay, and it took several years, 10 years. By that time, the plaintiff who got the decree originally enforced the decree, defendant was forced to pay the decretal amount to the plaintiff. Now the defendant won the case before the second appellate court. Then what is the remedy for him? Then he can file an application before the court which passed the decree, that is before the trial court, by way of an interlocutory application. IA, we call it as an IA. So an IA can be filed for restitution under 144 of CPC, asking the court what you need to establish. The petitioner, defendant or the losing party has to establish is he won the case. The decree which has been granted in favor of the plaintiff has been reversed by the appellate court. Therefore, by the time the decree has been already executed, therefore he can ask the court to grant the relief of restitution, directing the party who got the benefit of the decree to restore to put him in the original position. So the court, upon proof of reversal of the judgment, reversal of the decree, can pass an order in the interlocutory application itself. There is no need for, in fact, there is no need for filing separate suit. In fact, a separate suit is barred. Any order under section 144 itself says, if you are able to ask the relief by way of 144, by way of restitution, you have to ask the relief by filing that application only. You cannot file a subsequent suit, another suit for asking the plaintiff to pay back his money, to avoid multiplicity of proceedings. Therefore, if any order is passed under section 144 interlocutory application, the said order also amounts to decree. It's because, friends, you can straight away file an execution petition based on order passed under 144. So now the person who got an order under section 144 can file an application, execution petition before the court which passed it, and can compel the person, judgment debtor. The other person will be called as judgment debtor. He can be asked to obey the said order. So these are two inclusions: rejection of plaint and as well as section 144 determination. Then there are two exclusions. One is any adjudication from which appeal lies as an appeal from order, merely because there is a provision for appeal against any order, that doesn't make it as a decree. For example, OPs are there, original petitions. In original petitions, there will be orders will be passed that won't amount to decrees. And for example, interlocutory applications, the court passes some orders. In those orders are some orders during the course of execution, order 21, rule 90, all order 9, rule 13, setting aside the ex parte decree. All these orders are appealable under order 43 CPC. Therefore, merely because appeal lies from these orders, that doesn't make those orders as decrees. That's what 2A says. And any order of dismissal for default. If a suit is dismissed for default, suit or interlocutory application can be dismissed for default by the court if the party is not showing any interest or not prosecuting diligently. Therefore, that order doesn't amount to decree. That's what the definition says. So there are two inclusions and two exclusions. So I'll sum up. Decree means formal expression of an adjudication which, so far as the courts expressing it, conclusively determines the rights of the parties with regard to all or any of the matters in controversy in the suit, and maybe either preliminary or final. So it should conclusively determine the rights. The court shall not say, if defendant produce this document, the suit will be dismissed. Or if the plaintiff produces Kasra Pahani, he can be declared as owner. Decree shall be conclusive one. It shall not be a contingent one. Because I come across a judgment of a judge who says the suit is decreed, but it can again, depending on the decision of the revenue courts regarding exhibit B1. That's what the judge says in the judgment, the decree also. It is a blunder, because decree shall conclusively determine. If you want, you ask the parties to produce the document and you decide it. You can't say that on producing that document the suit will be decreed or the suit will be dismissed. So this is about the definition of decree, friends. There are two inclusions in it and two exclusions. And the definition also say preliminary and final decree. What is preliminary decree and what is final decree? And the explanation explains it. So I'll tell you, there are two varieties, in fact 3 varieties you can say. One is preliminary decree and one is final decree. The explanation says it is preliminary when some more things have to be done, and it is final, no such things are required. It conclusively determines nothing is to be done, straight away one can go and file an execution petition. Friends, preliminary decree, If I give you example, you can understand easily. In a suit for partition, in a suit for specific performance, in a suit for mortgage, in suit for rendition of accounts, the court passes preliminary decrees. Because take the example of a partition suit. Sister filed a suit for partition against her brothers and mother. One sister, three brothers and mother. There are therefore five shares. She says all the properties she is having share of 1/5 share, and she can lead evidence. She leads evidence and she succeeds in convincing the court, in proving, and the court believes her version and she is entitled to 1/5 share. Now the court says plaintiff is entitled to 1/5 share in plaint A, B and C scheduled properties. Now these properties have to be divided 5 equal shares. By way of preliminary decree, court determines the shares. After passing preliminary decree, the party who got the preliminary decree, or anyone can, in a suit for partition, anyone can apply for passing of final decree for division of the properties. They will file an application for appointment of commissioner for division. The court cannot come and divide the properties. The court can take the assistance of commissioners order 20 by virtue of order 26 CPC. We'll discuss later. Then the commissioner would come and he divides the properties into respective shares of the parties in terms of the preliminary decree, and he submits the report to the court. He divides item A, item B, item C, because there is no consensus among the parties for division of the properties. If it is money, no problem, they can take as it is. But if lands are there, if proper movable or immovable properties are there, they are supposed to what we can say get them divided by way of filing an application for appointment of commissioner. Now friends, the commissioner submits his report to the court. Again, by dividing the properties into 5 equal shares depending on their value and everything, good and bad quality of soil, everything. He has to consider all those things before he goes to the spot. He visits the lands and gives notice to them, takes their objections. Thereafter, he submits the report to the court. The court asks the parties if they are having any objections. The court can also take objections from the parties, decides the objections, and finally allots if there is a consensus, then they can allot according to their consensus. Otherwise, the court can draw lots. Then, based on draw, the court can allot the shares. Thereupon, again, an application has to be filed for passing of final decree, and a final decree will be passed, and it will be engrossed on non-judicial stamp papers. The plaintiff needs to pay stamp duty, and it's going to be the title document to the plaintiff with regard to her 1/5 share. So this exercise has to be done. Therefore, the original decree passed determining the 1/5 share is only a preliminary decree. Likewise, in a suit for specific performance, the court can direct the defendant to execute the registered sale deed or to do the thing agreed by him. Then it is a preliminary decree. Once the document is executed or the thing has been done, the court can pass a final decree. So mortgage suit, time for payment of money by the defendant borrower. If he fails to pay the money, the right of redemption will be foreclosed. The property will be goes to the creditor. So these are the varieties of preliminary decrees where some more things have to be done. And in case of a decree which is final at once, is a simple money decree, simple suit for recovery of possession. A files a suit for recovery of possession of his immovable property, and the court directs the defendant to restore the property within a period of 2 or 3 months. Then straight away he can file an execution petition under Order 21, Rule 35. So the court appoints a bailiff will deliver possession. There ends the matter. Therefore, it is final in its nature. Straight away he can file an execution petition. So these are the two categories. The third category is partly preliminary and partly final. For example, in a suit for recovery of possession, the plaintiff also sought the relief of mean profits, granting of mean profits. When mean profits are sought, they have to be determined. So two reliefs. One is recovery of possession of certain immovable property, and other relief is granting of mean profits by determining because the defendant is in wrongful possession. We will also discuss the definition of mean profits later. So far as the relief of recovery of possession is concerned, it is final. At once it is final, no thing has to be done, just to file an application for execution. So far as the relief of mean profits are concerned, the court has to ascertain the mean profits by appointing a commissioner. Again, the commissioner has to visit the spot, inquire with the surrounding owners of the land or owners of the properties what income he should have get. Then he has to submit the report, and the court would determine the quantum of mean profits to be awarded. So once it decides, it passes a final decree with regard to mean profits. Then based on that final decree, the party can file an execution petition. So friends, this is an example of partly preliminary and partly final. So suit for partition, there are preliminary decree and final decree, and simple recovery of money, it is one nature of decree, it is final at once. And in case of suit for recovery of possession along with mean profits, two reliefs are sought, then the decrees can be partly preliminary and partly final. And one more thing I want to tell you, n number of preliminary decrees and final decrees can be passed in a suit for partition. This is also the judgment of one of the judgments of the Supreme Court, says n number of judgments can be passed. So this is all about the definition of decree. Then decree holder. A decree holder is a person whose favor a decree has been passed or an order capable of execution has been made. So there are two clauses, I can say, that a person in whose favor a decree has been passed. So plaintiff approaches the court, decree is passed in his favor, therefore he can be called as a decree holder, and or an order capable of execution has been made. So if a person is given a right by the court, he can go and file an execution petition based on that order. He can be called as a decree holder. For example, in a suit for take the example of a matrimonial petition, divorce. Husband files a application for divorce against his wife based on various grounds under section 13 of Hindu Marriage Act. Now wife files an application for maintenance pendentility under section 24. She invokes section 24 of Hindu Marriage Act. Now court determines husband is an earning person, and whereas she is unable to maintain herself or her children, and the court passes an order granting some amount of money to her by way of monthly maintenance and also legal expenses. And the husband disobeys the said order. There is a procedure, there are several judgments, his defense can be struck off if he fails to pay, but she can also file an application for execution based on that order. Therefore she can be called as a decree holder in this example. In some cases, defendant also can be granted with some awards, some reliefs in interlocutory application. In that application, if a case is being filed against the landlord and the landlord was awarded some rent by the plaintiff tenant, applicant tenant, therefore that order he can enforce it. That order, when he is enforcing, he can be called as, for the purpose of enforcing said order, he can be called as decree holder. Similarly, judgment debtor. Here the judgment decree holder, person in whose favor a decree has passed, and there you would find the definition, in against whom a decree has been passed and an order capable of execution has been made. Means the state against whom a decree has been passed or an order capable of execution is made is called as judgment debtor. So another important definition is foreign court. A court is situated outside India and not established or continued by the authority of the central government. Any court established outside India and any court established not by the authority of the central government can be called as foreign court. If any court is established by a foreign government, it is a foreign court, and a judgment delivered by the foreign court is a foreign judgment. These are the two examples. And one definition is relevant here. Judge. 2.8 says judge. Judge means the presiding officer of a civil court. Simple one. CPC section 2.8. Those who are practicing, those who are appearing for junior civil examination, according to CPC 2.8, what the judge means, presiding officer of a civil court. You would find the similar definition in another enactment. What is that enactment? Section 19 of IPC. Section 19 says judge means any person designated as a judge and a person who is able to give a definitive judgment. That means if it is not set aside by the appellate court or a superior court, it becomes final. So if a person gives a definitive judgment, and if a person is designated as a judge, he can be called as a judge according to section 19 of Indian Penal Code, whereas CPC says presiding officer of a civil courts. This is enough. So he is a judge. Now friends, judgment. The definition is little bit confusing one. It says judgment means the statement given by the judge on the grounds of a decree or order. Statement given by the judge on the grounds of a decree or order. So what is first, judgment or decree? It is the judgment or order which comes first, because based on the judgment and order, the decree will be prepared. What is granted in the judgment shall reflect in the decree. What is not granted in the judgment shall not reflect and also refused. If it is refused, the decree shall also say it is refused. Whatever mentioned in judgment and order, that must be reflected in the decree. And the Order 20 Rule 6 says judgment, decree shall be in conformity with the judgment. And normally what happens in civil courts is judge pronounces the judgment. Thereafter the court staff would prepare the decree within the specified time in civil rules of practice. I think it is 15 days. They would prepare the decree. Decree is a abstract of judgment. The decree will be like this. They mentioned complete description of the parties, name of the court, date of the judgment. The decree, though it is prepared subsequently, it must contain the date on which the judgment is delivered. Am I clear, friends? Then description of the parties, claim, what is the claim, what is the court fee paid, what are the reliefs granted, what are the reliefs refused, and about the granting of cost or non-granting of cost, signature of the judge, and again there will be an appendix consisting of cost and also schedule if it is there. So it is decree. But whereas in case of judgment, the judge mentions the cause title, thereafter he mentions about the case of the plaintiff in brief, and again he mentions about the written statement, and he has to mention about issues, and he has to answer what are the documents filed by both the parties, and he has to answer those issues specifically. Each issue can be answered separately or together he can answer. Then his finding, discussion on evidence, thereafter his finding over the cases of respective parties, thereafter the relief granted or relief refused. At the end of the judgment, you would also mention the appendix, oral evidence, appendix of evidence, which includes oral evidence on the behalf of the plaintiff, oral evidence on the behalf of the defendant, and also documentary evidence, Exhibit A series, Exhibit B series, and if any documents are marked by the court or any person outsider, that means expert or commissioner, they will also be mentioned in the judgment. So judgment consisting of everything, it may run for pages. Thereafter decree will be prepared by the parties. Decree is for the purpose of filing execution petition. You need not file judgment along with your execution application unless the court directs. You just file your copy of decree, certified copy of decree. So this is about judgment, friends. Then legal representative. Who is a legal representative? The definition says 3 varieties of persons are legal representatives. A person who in law represents the estate of the deceased, includes any person who intermeddles with the estate of the deceased, and where a party sues or sued in representative character, person on whom the estate devolves on the death of the party so suing or sued. So, three categories of persons. A suit for recovery of money has been filed against the debtor. During the pendency of the case, the debtor dies. The suit is for 10 lakhs or whatever it is. Then the plaintiff has to bring the legal representatives on record. Here, the debtor is not having any properties. Whether the legal aids are bound to obey the decree or whether they can be brought on record. Of course, they can be brought on record, but their liability is restricted only to the extent of the estate they inherit from their deceased predecessor in title or deceased father, deceased debtor. So, if debtor is having a property of 10 acres of land and which is very well sufficient for satisfying the decree that may be passed against him, but he died, therefore the property would be gone, can be inherited by the legal representatives, therefore the estate is being devolved, his estate is liable, and so also the legal representatives. So, who in law represents the estate of the deceased, who intermeddles with the estate of the deceased, and who on whom the estate devolves, and they can be sued in a representative character. These all persons would come in the definition of legal representatives under section 211. Then friends, 212 speaks about mean profits. Mean profits is also an important definition. It says a person, the profits which derived by a person who is in wrongful possession of the property. For example, A is the owner of the land. His land has been occupied by the defendant B, and he continues in possession for a period of 5 years or 10 years. A was at USA and he returned back to India. He files a suit for recovery of possession because he is the registered owner, he is the title holder against B. Just he told B, his neighbor, to look after his land, but B denies to restore his possession. Therefore, he files a suit for recovery of possession. In the absence of A, he occupied the land of A and he cultivated it or whatever it is. Then B says, a suit is filed, title has been established within limitation, the suit is decreed. Then B derived some benefit out of the property because he did cultivation and he earned lakhs of rupees in all these 10 years. Therefore, he is liable to pay back those profits to A. That income he has to pay. Or there is a mango garden in the land of A. B occupied the land and appropriated it. Therefore, he is liable for making payment of return back those profits. These are called mean profits. And in the said suit, B says the land is abutting Nagarjuna Sagar Canal or Nagarjuna Sagar area where there is a water facility. Or take another example, it is a building at Banjara Hills. It would have fetched a 50,000 rent per month. Now, in the absence of A, or B illegally occupies that building or land. B says in his defense, in his written statement, he did not cultivate the land, or he says he did not lease out the premises, he just locked it and he kept it vacant. The court says, had A in possession of the property, he would have cultivated it because it is fertile land, water facility is there. Merely because you failed to cultivate it, that doesn't mean that you are not liable to pay the mean profits. Merely because you didn't let the premises, that doesn't mean that you are not liable to pay the mean profits. That's what the definition says. Actually received or might with ordinary diligence have received therefrom. A person, a farmer who is having a land abutting a canal area where there is a water facility, he must cultivate it. Ordinary prudent man would cultivate it and derive some benefit out of the land. A building at Banjara Hills would fetch rent if it is leased out. Therefore, you cannot escape your liability. You occupied, you are in wrongful possession. Though you did not actually receive the benefits, you might have received them. Therefore, you have to pay the mean profits. This would be ascertained by the commissioner. As I mentioned earlier, the commissioner would determine the mean profits and the court would award it. Of course, the defendant is having right to make his objections at the time the commissioner is determining the mean profits. Ultimately, the court would determine the quantum of the mean profits. That's what section 212 says. This is also important definition, friends, for the purpose of your junior civil judges examination. Might with ordinary diligence have received therefrom. Actually received, or might with ordinary diligence have received therefrom. So whenever you read any enactment, please note the key catchy words. I can call it as catchy words in that provision. These words are very essence to the provision or definition. You underline it, you divide the definition, try to understand the meaning of the definition, and you can easily reproduce it, or you can write in your own words. The definitions are very important for the purpose of understanding the other provisions of the Act. So this is all. And one more last definition is order means formal expression of any decision of a civil court which is not a decree. So conclusively determines the rights of parties is a decree. Any order, any formal expression dismissing the suit for default, passing an order for directing the parties to pay process, adjourning the case, any order, whatever it is, enlarging the time, and asking the defendant to deliver interrogatories and amending the plaint, whatever it is, any order passed by the civil court, any expression of a decision of a civil court amounts to an order. That should not be a decree, that amounts to an order. That's what definition says. So friends, these are the important definitions in CPC, and in the next video I'm going to explain about to which courts the CPC is applicable, and also explain about section 9 of CPC, suit of civil nature. Thank you for patient hearing.